So, to start off with my new tradition of the best tweet of the night, here I have men have no shame. They will literally ghost you in an audition for your season of The Bachelorette. And I feel like that is a perfect segue into everything that was going on with Joe. So, first things first, he comes out of the limo. They have a little meet and greet, whatever, whatever. Michelle's like, "Oh, do I know you from somewhere?" And he's kind of like trying to play it off. He's like, "I don't know. I'm also from Minnesota." Like, ooh. Which is just like, just say it. Like, you obviously know. Like, if someone says that to you, there's a 95% chance that they do recognize you, and you would know. I would hope that you remember when you exchange DMs with Michelle Young. So that shouldn't be something that you're like is not in your memory as you're literally on her season, as you're there to meet her. Whatever. So he's over there. He's like, "Listen, I don't know, whatever, whatever." She's like, "Oh, is your name Joe Coleman?" He's like, "Yeah, that's me." And then he goes inside, and then Michelle makes it her business to pull him as soon as she can. And my whole thing is, if he was really into her, like she says she slid into his DMs, right? So I'm not saying that he was trying to pursue her initially or whatever. But if he's really into her enough to go on to The Bachelorette, why would you not use the access that you had to her, the direct access that you had to her when it was available? Instead of now, he's like, "Oh, well, instead of just using this pathway to her DMs that she opened up for me, I would rather just go and compete for her love against 30 other men and have the potential of, number one, not getting one-on-one time." Because if you ask someone on a date in real life, they're not going to be like, "Oh, wait, let me ask 5 other guys that you don't know to join me on this date." Like, no, like it's going to be a one-on-one date. So he would have guaranteed one-on-one time with her if she had agreed to go out with him in Minnesota. He's giving up that. He's also pretty much giving up control over the relationship, right? Like, as a contestant, the only decision you can make is to either stay or leave. You can't really decide whether or not you're going to get picked at the end. So he's giving up that control, and you definitely have 10 times more control over your own relationships one-on-one when they're in real life. So it's not adding up. It's not clicking. Whatever. Michelle obviously confronts him about it, and she's like, "Hey, like, what was going on? Why did you ghost me?" And it sounds as though this might have been happening in 2020, because he's like, "Oh yeah, like I had a lot of properties in the George Floyd area, and there was a lot of like tension going on in my residential area, so I had to like take care of that. I wasn't really available to anyone at that point in time." And she's basically like, "Listen, just say that." Like, I don't need to know all these backstories, all these details. Like, okay, I didn't know you. I wasn't looking for you to like suddenly be my boyfriend based off of 3 DMs. But if you're gonna ghost me, like, just say that. And I totally get where she's coming from in the sense of like, why would you, like I said, why would you not use that access to her, ghost her, and then show up on her season of The Bachelorette? At no point in his mind did it occur to him to be like, let me, instead of jumping through all these hoops to get a chance with her, let me just not. Like, that never occurred to him, apparently. So after they kind of acknowledge what happens, and Michelle makes it clear that she wishes that he had just said something, she also expresses that she has a little bit of fear that he will shut down again if he's faced with something in his life, or if there is another impasse that he can't communicate through. And he says that's valid. He recognizes that that's something he needs to work on. He expresses that he's been going to therapy in an effort to improve his communication skills. And at this point in time, Michelle seems very on the fence about what sort of decision she will make with Joseph. But ultimately, fast forward to the rose ceremony, she seems to have a lot of internal strife. Again, she doesn't really know what she's going to do with him. Because also they haven't really had any conversation. Like, obviously, yeah, they talked about this whole DM situation, but like, she doesn't really know what his personality is. So since she decides to keep him, it's really just off the hope of like, I hope that you're interesting. Like, it's not really off of like, we had a conversation tonight and we really clicked, because they really started off with conflict. essentially. But she decides to keep him. One thing that also struck me as odd about this situation is Joe's reaction after they had their first little conversation. Because he's talking to the cameras and he's like, oh man, like, I wasn't planned to discuss this. Like, I didn't really have anything that I was prepared to say or discuss with her. And that's just like a massive question mark to me, because I am always, day and day again, honestly astounded by the lack of self-reflection some of these men out here in these streets possess. Because it's like, at no point in time did it cross your mind when you were actively getting yourself up out of your house, out of your state, traveling en route to meet this bachelorette. At no point in your mind did it occur to you to think about, I've interacted with this person before. Let me reflect on that interaction. Let me think about what went wrong, what went right, and what I can do better when I inevitably, by choice, go to see her again. At no point in time did that occur to him. It's appalling. It's confusing. It doesn't make sense how people move through this planet with no sense of self-reflection. Like, I will never understand it. It does not make sense to me. So I hope that he is able to, along this journey, garner those skills. But I don't know how much hope I have for him. Anyway, Michelle decides to keep him. At this point, like, obviously, like I said, I can understand her reservations about this guy. I can understand why she's wary of his intentions and how he handles, stressful situations or communication issues. But at the same time, she did make that decision to keep him, right? Like, she didn't decide for him to come to the show, but she did decide for him to stay on the show. So I feel like at this point moving forward, she can still have those reservations in the back of her mind, but I feel like she almost just kind of needs to let it go a little bit and just go into it with a more open mind and seeing what could actually come between them. So unclear what's going to happen with Joseph. I don't really know. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think it'll be interesting because I feel like this is not the last of his blunders.